I'm Clifton Warren, and welcome to the Top Producer Podcast. Why most firms don't have a growth strategy. Most firms think they have a growth strategy. I know, I ask them, they tell me. But what they really have is a revenue target and a set of activities. If you sat down with your leadership team and ask a simple question, what is your growth strategy? You'll tend to hear a fairly consistent set of answers. It sounds like this. We're targeting 10% growth this year. We've set a new business budget. We're hiring 2 more producers. And on the surface, that feels like a strategy. But this is where the confusion begins. Those things are not strategy. They are simply outputs. A target is not a strategy. A budget is not a strategy. A hiring plan is not a strategy. They describe what you want to achieve, but not how the growth is actually created. A growth strategy is much simpler and much more demanding. It answers 2 questions. Where does that growth come from, and how is it created? That's it. And this is where most firms begin to struggle, because when you push a little further, there isn't a clear answer. So instead, what you tend to hear is something like this. We grow through relationships, through referrals, through our producers. Now on the surface, that sounds reasonable, but when you look closer, that's also not a strategy. That's a reliance. Reliance on individuals, reliance on history, reliance on things that are difficult to scale and even harder to control. And this creates a gap, whether it's visible or not. There's no clearly defined path from market opportunity to revenue. There's no structural way that growth is designed to happen. So what fills the gap? Well, activity fills the gap. You got to do more calls, more meetings, more pipeline reviews. And over time, the activity gets mistaken for strategy. But activity is not architecture. And being pushed into the same as being structured is not the same as being structured. And when growth is driven by activity without design, you get inconsistency. Some periods are strong, some periods are flat. But the pipeline feels unpredictable, and performance becomes difficult to manage. Now, stronger firms take a different approach. The top performers take a different approach. They define the market segments they are targeting, the channels they'll use to reach them, the approach they take to engage, and the process that converts opportunity into revenue. In other words, they design how growth happens. But even when this is understood, many firms fall back to the default, to relying on individuals. And in future episodes, I'll break down why that reliance persists and why it's so difficult to move away from. But if you can't clearly describe how growth is created inside your business, you don't have a growth strategy.